So in terms of actually financing a particular property, the next stage to look at is what goes on in terms of the finance side when we go through the buying process. Obviously there's going to be a legal side to that as well. The solicitor's going to have some work to do, but what are the kind of key steps involved in the financing side?
Yeah, okay. What I would say is with regards to the start of that process, once you've got your offer accepted, that is the time, if you've not done so already, while you're making offers, to do an inquiry through Ideas to Empire's website. Now, what we will do after that is we will arrange within 24 working hours a call with yourself, and if you reserve sort of 20 to 30 minutes for that call, we'll cover in that call all the applicant details, all the sort of property details, and indeed, you know, what stage you want us involved at. What will follow thereafter, within sort of 7 to 10 working days, is a quote. That quote, as you've seen examples of, and you know, will have two key pages. The page at the front where you're learning what you're going to get amount-wise, loan-to-value-wise, pricing, and you know what all the fees and repayments are going to be, and then probably more importantly, what information we need back from you to take it from a quote to a credit underwritten offer, which you can instruct valuation on. So the key after the quote stage is to get the stuff back as soon as possible, especially if you get an offer accepted and it's a purchase, because time is key. You don't want to be letting down the sellers, the sourcers, the agents by waiting a month between us sending out the quote and you sending the stuff back. Please do, you know, send it back as soon as possible. Once we get that stuff back, then we'll take it through the credit underwriting process at the bank. They will produce either an agreement in principle or an offer, depending on the particular lender. And at that stage, we will generally take our nominal fee of £399. Once that's at that stage, you'll get a valuation instructed. That involves a chartered surveyor going out on site, taking pictures, looking at condition of the property, looking at recent sales in that area, recent sort of rentals that have happened, and they'll produce a report for the bank. That report will be available to yourself, and once that's signed off by the bank, then they will start instructing their legal team. Now, you can instruct your legal team before that, but at this stage, the bank's legal team will be liaising with your legal team to satisfy all the conditions so that you can draw the monies down, whether that's to complete or to remortgage. So yeah, that's the sort of process in the UK, from start to finish really. And at that finish, we generally will have our main fee, which is generally 1% of the loan, which is handled by the lawyers as it all draws down. So yeah, that's how it works in the UK. I know it's quite different from how it works in other countries, whereby you're approved to a certain level and then go and find whatever property you want. The quote that we do is specific to that property. If you miss out on that property, that's fine. We'll just do another quote for the new property, and we'll follow the same process each time. But initially, if you do the Ideas to Empire's inquiry form, and then thereafter, that initial chat, we can communicate via email or directly on the telephone. But yeah, that's the buying process here in the UK. So the refinancing process, slightly different. You might be refinancing straight away, you might be refinancing from something that you've bought years ago. So one of the frequent questions a lender will be asking will be, what was the original purchase price? What was the date that you purchased it? And then what's happened since? Did you do a refurbishment? Did you get planning permission for it to become a HMO? Have you got evidence of the receipts or the invoices of the refurbishment that you've done? So yeah, with the remortgage, it's just slightly more information probably relating to, we will always get you lending on the current value, but they still want to know a bit about the history of it. You know, how did you come to buy it? Was it on the open market? Was it a sourcer that got you? You know, was it a family member that sold it to you? All those types of things they want to know in terms of remortgages. So yeah, going on to sort of bridging, which is quite linked with quite often with remortgages and refurbishments as well. The bridging is generally short-term finance, which is generally maximum term of 12 to 18 months. Now, that is finance that draws down in one sort of main instalment at the start, and you will be paying interest on that from day one. I guess that differs when you sort of maybe go into the more complex projects. As you sort of build your portfolio, you might end up in what the lenders call a development, where they're looking at maybe drawing down one initial tranche of money, followed by, a few others subject to, some maybe surveyor or asset manager reports later in the project. Those guys will probably look at sort of GDV as well, which is gross development value, the end value, and maybe lend on that or lend on the loan to costs. But bridging, for most of our legacy students on a basic refurbishment, is on the actual purchase price, the loan to value, and it's drawn down in one tranche right at the beginning of the refurbishment. So yeah, just now a summary in terms of just key sort of tips really that you can do and you can do now without necessarily having a property that will help you, is knowing all your applicant details, knowing them before you have that initial conversation with your broker, before you fill your inquiry form, and fill an inquiry form at the right stage as well. Don't just go on your mentorship and then think maybe the next week, oh, I'd like to speak to that guy that we've seen on the presentation. Wait, speak with your mentors, and wait till you've got a property that you're really keen on and you want to move on seriously, and then we can give you a good quote and get you really going on that one. And if it doesn't happen, then we can look at another one in the future. But filling in the inquiry form at the right time is key. Gathering the information, doing the preparation that we talked about, getting your bank statements together, getting your IDs verified, all this sort of stuff you can be doing whilst you're looking for a property. And then once you find a property, knowing the sort of key values that we talked about, what you're going to purchase it for, what's the budget for the refurb, how long is that going to take, what's it going to be worth when it's finished, and what's the rental income. So all these sort of things, if you follow those sort of key tips, you won't go far wrong. It's not rocket science, it's not overly complicated this, it's just there's a process that we have in the UK, and our job as a broker is to guide you through it. We've been through it many times ourselves, and you benefit from our experience for doing that. So yeah, just work with us, and anytime we're asking for information back, just send it back as quickly as possible as well. That'll make it go as quickly as it can for you.
So some common questions that come up, starting off with the purchasing the process. We talked about timelines in one of the earlier sections, and we were talking about, depending on type of finance and type of lender, we might be looking at a 2 to 4 month process, kind of start to finish.
Yep.
Some of that is going to be down to kind of lender and applicant. You touched on the idea of making sure the documentation comes back quickly. That's the biggest input the investor can have in making that process go as quickly as possible. But also there's going to be the element of the solicitors doing some work there as well, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean the legal process, once it's at that stage, there's not a lot you can really do in terms of, from a broker's point of view or a client's point of view, other than stay on top of your solicitor. And by that I mean be in constant contact with them, make sure once the offer is issued that they've received a copy of it, the conditions of the offer, be asking them what they are, what's outstanding, making sure that it's always with the other side, because quite often what happens is we speak to the bank and the bank will say, well, we sent something to the client solicitor last week and we've not had a response yet. And the client's maybe not heard from the solicitor during that time. Well, if they were phoning them every few days, they would know that. And just really staying on top of them the way your broker stays on top of the lender up until that point, Once you get it, credit approved, that's the main lending stuff done. Then it's over to the valuer, and we'll chase the valuer, make sure. Generally takes a valuer a week to get out and then a week to get a report signed off. But once it's with the solicitors, that's where things tend to sometimes get more protracted, and it's easy to think at that stage, well, the deal's done, it's just the legals, but don't think like that. Stay on top of them, and continue to, if there is a blockage for whatever reason, use the benefit of our experience. We've been through this hundreds of times. Say, Paul, I've not heard from my solicitor in 2 weeks, what's going on? And then I'll speak to them, and if it's a case that there's a blockage with the bank solicitor, then I'll let the bank know that. Remember, as I said, our fee, our main fee, our 1% fee is on completion. So, we haven't really been paid a lot up until that point. So, we're keen to get it over the line from a selfish point of view, as well as, helping the client. And we know that there is sort of a lot of time pressure on some of these purchases particularly. So yeah, just stay on top of your solicitors as soon as they're really instructed post-valuation.
Okay, and bearing in mind with the solicitors, there may be some situations where they're asking questions they need to ask because maybe there's matters that are outstanding that they need some answers from the seller's side as well, so we've got that element in there. But as an investor, at least doing a chaser and making sure that there's not a blockage on our side or something that we can put in a call to the sourcing agent or follow up somewhere else is really important to kind of keep that process moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, the solicitors need to do their job at the end of the day, and they are doing they're doing the searches. If there's anything come out of that, if it's perhaps a property in a former mining area, or there might be an additional report needed that's maybe not come out of the valuation for whatever reason. There are a number of reasons why, but if the seller's solicitor is not reacting the way they should do, then we can help with that as well. So just let us know where the blockage is, and we'll try to use our experience to unblock it.
And you mentioned kind of solicitors there, and potentially bank or lender solicitors as well. Do they always use their own representation, or I know in some situations they may do a joint instruction with the investor's solicitor as well?
Yeah, there is what we call dual rep, and that is the reason people use it, particularly on maybe lower value properties, is because it does tend to speed things up where it can be used. So yeah, definitely use that option if it is an option. With the international insurance, it's probably not always available, even at the lower property end, but there's sometimes an express fee to be paid by somebody that maybe knows the process of a particular bank particularly well. Might be if you're doing Islamic finance or something like that, and your solicitor's never done that before, then you might be better working with somebody that is. Some lenders have a minimum sort of number of partners they expect a firm to have, and they might have SRA qualified. Not all solicitors are. So it's worth checking at an early stage before you incur major costs. Are the solicitors you're planning to use suitable for the lender that you're looking to work with? Okay,
and that's something that you can guide on as well, because I'm
Yeah.
assuming, like valuers, having a panel for
Yeah.
a particular lender, the lender will also have a panel for solicitors as well.
Yeah, quite often the case, and it might just be a case that your solicitor does fit all the criteria, they just haven't applied to join the panel. But again, if that is the case, then how long does that application to join the panel take, and is that going to delay things unnecessarily? Whereas you might just be worth using one of their solicitors if it is a case that's going to delay things unnecessarily.
Now, you mentioned sometimes a situation can happen where maybe the initial quote's been done on a particular property. Maybe it's something that you were having the quote done when you were at the stage of making a serious offer, but that offer got rejected by the seller, or someone else made a higher offer.
Mm-hmm.
If you then go on to another purchase of a similar property, can you reuse some of that previous application to some extent?
Yeah, I mean, what we'll do is, the whole idea of doing the ideas to MPAS inquiry is that creates a file for yourself with B2B Finance, and once we have that initial chat, we complete that file, so we fill in all the gaps in it, and the predominant part of that is the applicant. The property is a small part of it. The applicant details won't change. the director, unless there has been a change of directors, but quite often the applicant hasn't changed, it's just the property. So yes, we will refer back to that. I will know, where you're resident, what passports you hold, what your income is, what your landlord experience is, what the name of the limited company is. So all I really need is the property details, which quite often are covered mostly with the sourcing document. If you maybe say, Paul, this is the new one I'm interested in, maybe attach me a PDF of that. I can use that, and if there's any gaps in that, then I'll come back to you to do a new quote, really. So yeah, if it's a similar sort of value property in a similar area, similar number of rooms, etc., the likelihood is it is going to be very similar loan to value and pricing wise if it's happened in the last month or so. But it might be if it's been 6 months, the market might have changed slightly, or if it's a slightly higher value or lower value property, maybe the last one was 80k and this one's 120k, that brings a few new lenders into it. Just send us the sourcing document in the first instance. Mark it urgent if it's something that you really need a rapid response on. Maybe even give me a call or a voicemail to let me know that you've sent it through, and we'll get a new quote to you as soon as possible, and just follow the same process for that one as we would have done if you had your offer accepted on the previous one.
And then the final kind of question to ask here, and this is really a kind of process point. We know the lender's going to have their own valuation of the property done, but quite a few of our students, because it's something we teach as best practice for legacy, will have their own survey or valuation done on purchase, so that they're ahead of any issues in relation to that property. Also, so that they have the benefit of the surveyor's professional indemnity insurance as well. Will it kind of help your side and maybe help the solicitor side as well if a copy of that survey is available at the outset, so if there are any issues, everybody knows about them straight away?
Yeah, I think there's certainly I think particularly with us people buying cash, I think it's prudent to have their own valuation done for the sake of £300-400. You'll get a lot more value in it than that, really. I think, we don't generally request it as a document to return as part of our package that we send to lenders, but certainly if you want to send it, then I think it certainly gives them more information than they would have otherwise processing your application without one.